Hello, this is Roland. Welcome. Today I want to tell you about one of my books, one of my favorite books, which I almost never talk about. I don't know why I should. It's called A Weekend with Einstein and Augustine. A Weekend with Einstein and Augustine. Exploring God's creative genius and finding love everlasting. How can I describe this book? It's a fabulous book. Let me break it down into a couple of things that you'll find in it. First of all, you'll find, I would say, at least 3, maybe 4 chapters on intuition. One of my favorite topics. I say that you've got to reestablish contact with your intuition and trust it. What do they say? Trust your gut. Okay, trust your intuition. Well, you have to do that. You have to learn to do that always, in all things, in all matters, great and small, to look first to intuition. And in this book, I talk a lot about Einstein, Albert Einstein, very nice man. And I talk about how he made his discoveries through intuition. See, it was intuition. I even have quotes from him about it. See, he didn't make up the things that he found out. He discovered them. And he had an intuition. He had a hunch. And he followed it and followed it. And then he did some thought experiments. Okay, and those helped him to frame or to think about his intuition. See, the intuition is wordless. See, in the same way as, let's say, this example I always give, but it's a good example. You're taking a college course at night in a big city. It gets done about 9 o'clock. Now you're leaving the college and you're walking to your car. And to get to your car, there's a shortcut through a dark alley. So you're just about ready to walk down that dark alley to get to your car. But all of a sudden, you sense something is wordlessly warning you not to go down that alley. You just have a strong knowing not to go down that alley. So you don't. And you're safe. Who knows what was lurking in that alley? See what I mean? That's intuition. Well, so it's a protection, but it's also a guide. Einstein followed his intuition. People like Stephen Jobs, Mozart, Isaac Newton, okay? The great explorers, the great entrepreneurs, the great inventors. They had a hunch, they had a sense, and they followed it. Okay? So, first came intuition, a wordless knowing, and then came the thought experiments, and then he found math. See, he found thought experiments to visualize what he knew, what he already knew. He was just seeking to confirm what he already knew, and then he came up with the math, and then he talked about it, and then sometimes it was years later that what he had discovered was finally confirmed through experiments. Okay? So, you've got to learn to follow what you know in your heart. So I spend a lot of time talking about people like, and I have a lot of quotes from people like Albert Einstein and Stephen Jobs. Okay? It's worth the book just for the quotes about intuition. Okay? But another word for intuition, maybe will be a surprise to you, but another word for intuition is conscience. Okay? Your real conscience, what you know in your heart is right. Okay? Now, we also have a false conscience. People lay all kinds of obligations on us, don't they? Oh, you should do this, you should be nicer, you should do this, you should do that. You should try harder, you should get better grades, you should do more for, see? You should volunteer more. But that's false. Okay? But you have a real conscience. It's what you know in your heart. It's like when you were a little child. If you got angry at your mommy, or you were mean to your little brother or sister, you knew in your heart that it was wrong. Okay? Well, that's your real conscience. But you know what? That's also intuition. People who follow their intuition, always, they don't have any conscience to bother them because they're following their intuition. See, why does a person have their conscience bothering them? It's because they didn't follow didn't do what was right in the moment. You see, they became resentful or angry or mean or something. You see. All right? So all you have to do is reconcile with conscience. And then you can become an Albert Einstein or a Madame Curie, okay? Or a Mozart or Stephen Jobs, okay? Well, so there's that. So now talking about conscience, who did I give as an example of conscience? St. Augustine. St. Augustine. He wrote his famous book, The Confessions of St. Augustine. It's been a classic for centuries, ever since what, the 5th century? People have been reading it for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a good read, and he's honest. He talks about how he messed up, and when he was young, he did a lot of bad things, okay, but there was something that was calling him. Somehow he knew in his heart, and so he was searching for what he knew in his heart, and he eventually found what he was searching for, and it was God, or God found him. So conscience and intuition are the same thing. Okay? So I talk about St. Augustine. I have several chapters on St. Augustine. Okay? Then I continue talking about intuition and about conscience, what you know in your heart. And I say that through your intuition, you can know God. You can begin to understand things, mathematical, physics, psychology. You begin to see, you begin to realize things, okay? So here's, for example, I have a chapter called Hitch Your Wagon to a Star. And after having laid the groundwork about intuition, I then begin an exploration of the universe and how the universe was made, and about science and about math, and about how God, about the universe that God has created. So it's very philosophical and somewhat scientific, but it's the kind of science that, you know, it's like science for a liberal arts major. Okay? So you'll be able to, even if you're not a scientist or a mathematician, there's no problem. It's not a book of formulas and heavy stuff. It's light reading, but it's very philosophical, very beautiful. Okay? And what it is meant is to spark realization on your part. When you read some of this, you say, oh, I see. See? Then you have your own realizations about such things. There's a very nice introduction to science through intuition. And then you'll see how what scientists have found or discovered, you'll see how some of what they say is not true. They're misguided about some things. Other things are true, and the math is true. You know, the basic math, kinematics, and Maxwell's laws and so forth are true. Well, you'll see how those are true. And you don't have to be a mathematician, you'll just see. Okay? So now, let me just read a little bit something to you. How about if I read the back cover? A Weekend with Einstein and Augustine. We all are looking for love. What if love is at the very ground of our being? What if love has been there all along, but we fail to recognize it? To find this love and its source, author and speaker Roland takes us on a weekend tour of the universe with Doctors Albert Einstein and Aurelius Augustine. Fasten your seatbelts, because you will explore outer space, even be present at the creation of the universe. And inner space, our deepest needs for love, fulfillment, and meaning. You will learn of the mystery of time and why it holds the secret to eternal life. You will find out what is the interface between matter and the spiritual source of its creation. And you will discover the interface between human consciousness and divine providence. Okay? A weekend with Einstein and Augustine. From the introduction. The introduction begins like so. First, there's a quote from Albert Einstein. One had to cram all this stuff into one's mind for examinations, whether one liked it or not. The coercion had such a deterring effect upon me that after I had passed the final examination, I found the consideration of any scientific problem distasteful to me for an entire year. So what he's talking about is how they tried to ruin it, see. Instead of allowing him to discover by way of his imagination, which he did anyway, they tried to force him and pressure him and coerce him. You know how it is in school. And it didn't work for him. So he didn't do well in school. But he became Albert Einstein. Okay? This book is about God, His universe, and His people, the human race, created by Him in His image and likeness. It contains clues about God's relationship with the universe He created, and about how He relates to people and how He wants us to relate to each other. It is intended to be heuristic, to help the readers begin to discover for themselves answers to some of life's deepest questions. Imagine that you're going to attend a weekend conference and retreat. It is billed as a weekend of learning, discovery, and personal growth. And you made reservations months in advance for this once-in-a-lifetime event. Held at a beautiful conference center in the woods, it is to be an intimate gathering of no more than 50 attendees. The facilitators are Dr. Albert Einstein and Aurelius Augustine of North Africa. How stimulating it would be. There's a buzz in the audience during the first Friday afternoon conference, and the excitement builds throughout the entire weekend. It lives up to all expectations from the gala opening gathering Friday night, where both Drs. Einstein and Augustine introduce themselves and talk about their current projects, followed by a full Saturday and Sunday of seminars, breakout groups, and learning activities to the closing conference on Sunday afternoon. Well, you can see how I begin. Okay? And then it continues. Intuition, conscience, the great inventors and explorers, the universe, God's relationship with the universe that He created and with His people. Okay? A weekend with Einstein and Augustine. At the end of the book, I have an appendix where I have some interesting things. I have two proofs for the existence of God from Thomas Aquinas. These are good This is good reading. You may never have read these. It would be very good to do it. His argument of the unmoved mover and argument of the first cause, which I see, which I see. A reading from the book of Genesis. A beautiful poem from Oliver Wendell Holmes. A beautiful poem from Frederick Faber. A poem On Time by John Milton. A reading from the book of Job. An introduction to Isaac Newton's General Scholium. Isaac Newton had some things to say about creation and about God. It's very interesting reading. and some reading from the Confessions of St. Augustine, all having to do with conscience, intuition, and discovering God and His universe. Okay? Guiding principles. These are some things that I put here at the appendix. You might find them of interest. I won't read them all, but I'll just begin. Guiding principles. God the Father is the creator of heaven and earth. He is the unmoved mover. He is the first cause. He is in the timeless realm. Number 1. The universe is comprehensible. Number 2, the universe is created and began at a specific point in time. Number 3, before the movement of the beginning of physical creation, there was no time, only timelessness. Before the moment of beginning, there was no space. Time and space came into existence when there was matter. Number 4, the universe did not begin with a big bang. It begins with a big whoosh. God willed an action, and through it He expressed Himself. He created pre-time, moving stillness, and then it began to accelerate and circumorbit the still center. To find out more about Albert Einstein and Augustine, and about intuition, and about creativity, and about conscience, and about the universe. See, this book is intended to get you started. See, to get you thinking, to get you realizing. See, to begin to see for yourself. But then you can write a book like this with your discoveries, which will help other people begin to see also. So may I recommend you get this book, A Weekend with Einstein and Augustine. It's on Amazon in both quality paperback, 430 pages, and also in Kindle. Or you can get an ebook from me for a small donation, which I will send you the ebook as an attachment to an email.